The scream tore through the night like a knife. Jamie's ears rang as he stumbled backward, tripping over broken floorboards of the old house. The sound didn't come from a person. It came from the house itself. Every wall, every window, every door seemed to wail with a voice that was not human. The windows rattled violently, and the shadows in the corners stretched like claws toward him. Jamie's heart pounded so hard he thought it would burst. He wanted to run, but his feet felt glued to the floor. The scream stopped for just a moment, only to return louder and sharper, shaking the very air around him. He swallowed hard. Something inside the house was alive, something angry, something that didn't want anyone there. And then, just as quickly as it had started, the sound vanished, leaving a hollow silence so thick Jamie felt like he could touch it. He couldn't move. He couldn't speak. He could only stare at the doorway, where the shadows seemed to pulse as if breathing. A cold wind brushed past him, whispering his name. Jamie's hands shook. "No, this can't be real," he whispered. But even as he said it, he felt the walls close in, the floor tilt slightly under his feet. A shadow shifted behind the doorway, and it wasn't his own. His stomach twisted with fear. Something was coming for him, and he didn't know if he could escape it. 2 nights ago, Jamie would have never imagined standing in a house that screamed. In fact, he had been excited, even a little curious, when he and his friends had dared each other to explore the abandoned house at the edge of town. No one in their small town of Maplewood wanted anything to do with the place. Old Mrs. Grayson across the street always warned kids to stay away. She said the house hated visitors. But Jamie thought it was just one of her spooky stories meant to scare neighborhood children. The house had been empty for as long as anyone could remember. Its windows were cracked and dusty, the paint peeled, and the garden was overgrown with weeds taller than Jamie himself. Rumors swirled among the kids at school. Some said the previous owners had disappeared overnight. Others claimed that lights could be seen flickering inside, even though no one had lived there for years. For Jamie, it had seemed like the perfect adventure. Earlier that evening, Jamie and his 2 friends, Alex and Lily, had sneaked out past curfew with flashlights and backpacks full of snacks. They laughed nervously as they approached the house, making jokes about ghosts and haunted basements. At first, the creaking floorboards and broken doors seemed almost funny. A rat scuttled across the hallway, and Lily shrieked, making the others jump and then laugh. It all felt harmless, until midnight. At exactly 12 o'clock, the house seemed to change. The air became thick and cold. The shadows grew longer, crawling along the walls. Doors that had been closed earlier creaked open slowly by themselves. Jamie noticed the old chandelier above him swinging, though there was no wind. Then came the first scream, a deep, hollow wail that seemed to shake the bones inside him. It wasn't like any person's voice. It was a sound full of pain and rage, rising and falling in an unnatural rhythm. The 3 friends froze. Alex wanted to run, Lily wanted to scream, and Jamie could only stare. And that was when it happened. The shadows on the walls stretched toward them, twisting, growing thicker, like black smoke that wanted to wrap around their bodies. Jamie's flashlight flickered, then went out entirely. In the darkness, the walls themselves seemed to move, and then the scream came again, louder, closer, sharper than before. Jamie felt a cold hand brush past his shoulder, even though he was alone. And in that moment, something slammed behind the front door. The sound echoed like thunder, and the door rattled violently as if someone or something was trying to break it down. Jamie's heart felt like it had stopped. The shadows pressed closer. He could hear faint whispers now, words he didn't understand, but somehow they sounded angry, warning, hungry. He took a step backward, almost tripping over a broken chair. The others were silent, frozen with fear. The house groaned again, almost like a living thing settling in for a fight. Jamie knew one thing for sure. They should have never come inside. They were not welcome. Then a final, ear-piercing scream erupted from the very heart of the house. This time, it sounded right behind them. Jamie spun around and saw the doorway empty, the shadows stretching, but something darker, something moving faster than his eyes could follow, lurked just beyond the frame. He felt a hand, or maybe a claw, touch his arm. His scream caught in his throat. And then Everything went black. Jamie's eyes snapped open. The room was quiet now, almost too quiet. The shadows had retreated, but a lingering chill made the hairs on his arms stand up. He blinked rapidly, trying to shake off the terror that gripped him. Alex and Lily were huddled together across the room, shivering, their flashlights dimly flickering. No one spoke. No one dared move. The echoes of the scream still throbbed in Jamie's head like a drum. What just happened?" Lily whispered, her voice trembling. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to hold back tears. Jamie didn't answer. He couldn't. All he could do was stare at the doorway, half expecting whatever had screamed at them to reappear. The air still smelled damp and musty, like the house itself was breathing. Earlier that night, nothing seemed so terrifying. The three of them had approached the house like it was just an old, abandoned building. The stories from the neighborhood, the rumors about vanished families and strange lights, had seemed distant, almost fun to joke about. Jamie remembered the thrill he'd felt as they crept through the broken gate and stepped into the overgrown yard. The first floor smelled of mold and dust. Spiderwebs clung to the corners. The old wooden floors groaned under their footsteps, and every door they opened seemed to sigh like a ghost. Alex, always the brave one, had led the way, shining his flashlight into the darkness. "Bet there's nothing in here but mice," he had said, trying to sound confident. But even he had jumped at the sound of a floorboard snapping beneath his foot. Lily had laughed nervously, brushing a long strand of hair from her face. "You're scaring yourselves more than anything else," she said. For the first hour, the three of them explored cautiously, laughing at every creak, pretending it was all part of the adventure. They checked the living room, the kitchen, and even a staircase leading to the second floor, where the shadows seemed deeper, almost solid. Nothing happened. Not yet. That made it worse. The stillness of the house felt like a warning. Then, as midnight approached, Jamie had felt the change. The house seemed to wake up, and the shadows began to move strangely. The air grew icy. Even the floorboards felt slick, almost like they didn't belong to the house anymore. And then the first scream ripped through the darkness. After the scream, they had huddled in silence for what felt like hours, trying to gather the courage to move. Jamie tried to calm himself, telling his friends they should just leave. But as he stood, his flashlight revealed something strange. On the wall across from him, there were scratches, thin, long, and jagged, like claws or fingernails had gouged the plaster. They hadn't been there before. What are those?" Jamie asked, his voice shaking. "I don't know," Alex said. He tried to sound calm, but the tremor in his voice gave him away. Maybe it's just old damage, right? But Jamie knew it wasn't just old damage. The marks were fresh, and they led toward the staircase. Slowly, cautiously, he followed the trail of scratches with his eyes. The steps to the second floor were darker, colder, and somehow wrong. It was as if the shadows themselves had pulled there, thicker than anywhere else in the house. The three friends debated leaving, but a strange pull kept them rooted to the spot. Something inside Jamie whispered that they weren't finished yet, that the house wasn't done showing them its secrets. He took a deep breath and forced himself to move toward the staircase. The other two followed reluctantly, clutching each other for support. The second floor smelled worse than the first, a mix of mildew and decay, with a faint hint of something metallic. Their footsteps echoed on the cracked wooden boards. Each room they passed seemed ordinary at first. Old furniture covered in white sheets, cobwebs, broken windows. But the shadows in the corners grew darker, moving subtly, as if watching. Every time they turned a corner, they thought they saw a figure vanish just out of sight. Then in the master bedroom, they found a dusty, broken mirror, but the reflection didn't match the room. In it, they saw themselves standing, but the reflection smiled when the real people did not. Their eyes were darker, and the room behind them in the mirror wasn't dusty. It looked alive, almost like it was breathing. Jamie's stomach dropped. We need to get out of here," he whispered. But before anyone could move, the mirror cracked loudly, as if something had hit it from behind. The cracks spread across the glass like spiderwebs, and the shadows in the room deepened, twisting unnaturally. A cold wind slammed the door shut behind them. The flashlight beams flickered and went out. And then a new sound filled the room, a low, guttural growl coming from somewhere deep inside the walls. It was a sound that no living creature could make, and it made their blood run cold. Jamie reached the doorknob, but the handle twisted violently in his hand. The growl rose into a roar, and the walls seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. Something heavy slammed against the floor above them, shaking the ceiling. Then, the lights from outside the broken windows flickered, shadows dancing violently in the corners, and one of them stretched forward, coming closer. And then a hand, black, twisted, and clawed, reached out from the darkness and grabbed Jamie's arm. He screamed,